In today's subscriber story, the teacher's out for the day, so they get the class a substitute teacher. However, this substitute teacher turns out to be pretty evil, bro. She probably does her worst act at the end, so make sure to stick around. And with that being said, enjoy the story. So the subscriber who sent this in, he's pretty old now. He's like in high school or whatever, which makes me, as a college man, saying that that is old, feel like a really old man. But anyways, right? So this subscriber, this story actually took place back when he was in 7th grade. So he was in a math class in 7th grade, and he had some friends in it. And it was a relatively hard class, but it was also pretty fun. And they really liked the teacher. But one day they get to class, right? And they're kind of waiting around. And the thing is, the teacher is like one of those dudes who like wakes up at 5:30 a.m., goes to bed at like 8:30 at night, right? He's definitely on the early side of the early riders. I've tried to do that myself a few times, and it's just absolutely failed. I just sleep in every time. But anyways, right? So he normally gets there like 5 or 10 minutes before anyone else. So whenever the first person walks into the math class, they're always greeted by the math teacher, and no one has ever been in the class before he's been there. There hasn't even been one occasion, right? So they get there, and the subscriber walks into math class and looks to the desk where the teacher normally is, and he notices that the desk is empty, and he's like, "Oh wow!" It startles him because he has never been in the class when the teacher's not been there. He's even gotten there like 5 minutes early. That's how I know the dude gets there early too, because the subscriber once got there early and the teacher was already there. And he's also explained to the class how he gets up at like 5:30 in the morning to go do like his workout or whatever, right? So they kind of like realize that something is off today. So he goes to the back of the class, and he sits next to one of his friends that he always sits next to, because while they don't have assigned seats, they definitely have unassigned assigned seats. If you know, right? And he asks, like, "Bro, like, where's the teacher? He's never been late." Saying that, like, as they're sitting down, this woman walks into the room, and she's probably like 22, 23. She can't be like that far out of college, right? Maybe she's even like last year potentially, but most likely she's out of college. So the woman introduces herself as Miss Jones. She says, "Hi, everyone. My name is Miss Jones, and I will be your substitute teacher today. Mr. I don't know, like the teacher you normally have. I'm just not going to come up with a name because he's not going to be referenced again, and I get confused way too easily with these names. Your teacher, basically, he's out sick and was really last minute. He caught he ate something he shouldn't have ate last night, apparently, and it really has not been settling well with him, and we had to call in a substitute really last minute. So that's why you guys didn't know beforehand. But hi, my name is Miss Jones. I also know that you guys will be, you have a quiz to cover and also some new material to go over. So we'll be doing the quiz first, and then I will be teaching you guys the new material. As I did a lot of math in high school, I'm pretty sure I can cover this." So everyone was like, "Okay, that's fine." And the first impressions of Miss Jones were like, "Oh, she seems cool. Like, she's fresh out of college. Like, whatever. Like, she seems pretty cool. She seems like she'll be a good substitute." My God, were they wrong. First impressions don't always equal like who someone actually is. First impressions, a lot of people will judge you off of. So have good first impressions. But wow, this first impression apparently was like polar opposite of the what would happen in literally like 3 minutes after. It's pretty funny. So the substitute hands out the first quiz, and she says, "You guys, it looks like you guys will be given 15 minutes to finish this." She looks over the quiz, and she's like, "Yeah, you guys should be fine, right?" So she hands it out, and everyone's, begins. And everyone, starts out by taking out their calculators and their pencils, and the teacher's like, "Whoa, whoa, you don't need a calculator for this." And then one of the students pipes up and says, "Mr. Whatever, like our teacher normally lets us use a calculator." And she starts looking at the quiz. And the subscriber can only assume that she's looking at the math problems and seeing how relatively easy they would be for her, even though obviously she's done years and years of math in college. And she's just like, "No, you guys obviously don't need a calculator for this." And the subscriber looks down at the quiz, and for his level of math, man, he was in 7th grade at the time. Yeah, when telling me the story, because now he's in high school, he could probably do it without a calculator. But at the time, he remembers seeing it and being like, "Yeah, I need a calculator to do this. I've never done it without a calculator." The teacher, my, professor, or not professor, it's middle school, bro, or high school. My teachers also, never taught me how to do it without a calculator. I honestly can't do this without a calculator. And she's just looking at all of them like, "Well, okay, I know your teacher, who's normally in class, has you do that, but, who's teaching you now?" And then they all kind of look at her like, wow, I thought she was chill. It's only been 3 minutes and she's already saying like we can't use our calculators just because she says so. And even when we explain that like we always use our calculators, she says no just because who's teaching the class, quote unquote. Like, wow, okay. Right, so everyone kind of just doesn't question her because, like, they don't want to fight with the substitute. Like, they're like, okay, like, this is really annoying, and we'll probably just explain to the teacher, like, our actual teacher. They just think this to themselves. They don't say this, by the way, but they basically say to themselves, like, okay, we'll just explain to our actual teacher that, like, we were forced to do this quiz without a calculator, and we really think he'll understand because the dude was apparently super awesome. Like, he was a great teacher and he just like understood. Like, he just, sometimes teachers will not understand or they'll choose not to understand. This dude was a bro and he just understood. Like, he had been in college before. He had been doing all of this before. This wasn't anything new. Like, he had been there and he like, he kept his perspective. Sometimes teachers, man, like they just like the second they're out of like being like school, it's like, and they become a teacher, it's like they instantly assume like the rules have changed. It's different now. Like, I know I experienced this, but these kids, nah, they must be different, right? No, everyone faces like the same stuff. Anyways, right, bit of a tangent. Anyway, so they're just going ahead, they're doing the test, and the subscriber's just like, I'm gonna actually fail this because he couldn't finish a single problem without the calculator. And yeah, maybe he should have been able to do that, and he was a little reliant on the calculator, to be fair. But at the same time, they had not learned how to do it without one yet. So he's sitting there, and it's like 7 minutes in, and he's like, okay, I bet I could get a little bit farther into these problems because I still have half the time. As she said in the very beginning, you guys have 15 minutes to finish this quiz, right? Real quick, if you enjoy storytime videos, make sure you do go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to hit 400K by the time New Year's rolls around. That's a pretty big stretch if it's actually going to happen, so every subscription helps. And with that being said, back to the story. I'm making those promos really short, guys. Are you proud of me? Anyway, so this teacher kind of looks around at the class, and she looks at the clock, and she looks down at the copy that she has, because she actually still has a copy of the test. I think like someone wasn't there that day, so there was like 1 or 2 extra copies. So she was looking over at it, and she was just looking at everyone. Then she's looking back at the test, and she started to get like annoyed. So the subscriber is working pretty hard, and he's getting through it, and he's feeling pretty good about himself. But then all of a sudden, the teacher, like he hears the teacher say something, the substitute, I should say, and he looks up, and Miss Jones is like, guys, okay, I know it's only been 7 minutes, but I'm going to collect the quizzes. You guys should really be done by now. And everyone's like, what? Well, there's like chatter and stuff. She's like, I don't want to hear it. I'm collecting quizzes. Like, this material, I'm looking at it. You guys should definitely be done with this. I don't know why you're given 15 minutes, so I'm going to actually collect these early because you guys should be done with this. And the subscriber's like, what? Like, I barely had a chance without my calculator with 15 minutes, but only 7 minutes? Like, I haven't finished any of these problems. I'm sure I'd get done with them in 15 minutes, but I'm definitely not done with them now. So, like, people are kind of complaining and, like, whining a little bit, and she says, I don't want to hear it. I'm going to take your quizzes. So she starts going around collecting quizzes, and, like, the subscriber, like, is frantically, like, writing something down because he's about to finish one problem. Like, he was super slow without the calculator and wasn't able to get any other problem fully done, just a little bit, but he was just finishing up one problem, and he looks up, and the substitute teacher's just looking down at him, and she's like, erase that. And he's like, what do you mean? She said, erase that. Like, I said I was collecting it and we're done. And he said, yeah, but you didn't collect mine. I did this before you collected it. She said, I was watching you. You were doing it while I was collecting. And he's like, yeah, but you didn't collect it. She said, nope, that's cheating. Erase that. So reluctantly, he just looks down at his paper and is kind of like angrily like erases it and hands it up really jerkily. And she kind of like smiles at him. And he's so thrown off by this. She's like, and he's just like, why are you smiling at me? He doesn't say this, but he thinks like, why? Like, why is she smiling at me? Guys, if you made it this far into the video, I want you to comment evil teacher down in the comment section down below. Yes, evil teacher. That's the secret word of the day. I forgot to do it in the last 2 videos because I got too into the stories, but I wrote down in my notes, like, remember to ask for the secret phrase. So don't worry, guys. Secret phrase. You'll get a bunch of free hearts. I'm going to heart as many of those comments as I can. If you want to get top commenter on the channel, easiest way to farm hearts. So yeah, comment evil teacher in the comment section down below. With that being said, back to the story and a little preview. It only gets worse from here. Anyways, so she collects all the papers and everyone's kind of like grumpy at this point. So she's like, okay, time to like teach the new material. And so she goes up to the board, and instead of like following the instructions that were left by the teacher or were given by the teacher of the previous class to the substitute, she just completely ignores that. Like they notice her open like the guide and then close it immediately, just enough so she can know what the topic was. And she starts going on and explaining the math topic, but like almost on purpose, like using like phrases and words that she knew that they would never be able to know. And she started using concepts from like really late math, like algebra 2, pre-calculus, to explain some really basic fundamental math stuff you learn in 7th grade, honestly just to confuse the class. Okay, the subscriber can't be certain of that fact, but it was very apparent by the way that she acted before and the stuff she's about to do. So while she's quote-unquote explaining, the math and like really not explaining it in terms any 7th grader could ever understand, right? One of the kids in the subscriber's class ends up raising their hand to ask a question. And when this person asks a question, the substitute teacher looks at them, smiles, and laughs. And the subscriber's mouth is like dropped. He's like, I knew the substitute teacher was evil, bro, but like, what? She's laughing at a question? She's a teacher. She's a teacher. She's supposed to be like, yes, a question, of course. Let me explain it, not, haha, you don't understand what I'm saying. Like, she was legitimately evil. It was kind of crazy, right? Anyways, though, so she just keeps teaching. She doesn't even address the question. She just laughs, and they just at this point, the subscriber is like, okay, this class is a wash. I'm just trying to get through it. I'm not even going to pay attention because there's nothing to pay attention to. My God, do I pray for my teacher's recovery? Like, I would be praying for his recovery either way because he's a good dude, but like, my God, I need him to come back. This can't go on anymore. Thankfully, this was not a super long class. It was only like 45 minutes or something. It's not like she was like a homeroom teacher and they had her for like half the day or whatever, right? So the class eventually ends and the subscriber is just ecstatic, right? And then she says on the way out, she says, oh, don't forget to hand in your homework to me, as you're leaving, right? And the subscriber honestly thought nothing about it because, yeah, he's just handing in homework. And also, he was in such a good mood because the class was over and this was hopefully the last time he'd ever have to interact with her, right? So he was like, like a big old smile, like, thank you, even though he didn't mean it. He was just in such a good mood that the class was over. He hands in his homework, and everyone is kind of like filing out the door, handing in their homework, right? So they're all walking down the hall, and the substitute teacher looks at them and like walks out the door and kind of like makes a noise like, hey guys, and they all turn around, and she looks at them with this big smile on her face. And they all look back at her. And she's holding all their homework in one hand together. And the thing was, the homework was on one single piece of paper, and there was like 25 kids in the class, so it wasn't a very thick stack. She looks at them, holds up their homework, tears all of them down the middle, tears it in half, looks at all of them, smiles, and says, have a good life, slams the door. Everyone's mouths drop. They just stand there in like shock for a minute. And they're just, the subscriber eventually, who's pissed at this point, he's so mad after being shocked. He was in a state of shock for like a good like 30 seconds. Eventually, after being, out of the shock, right, he turns to all of them, he says, okay, we got to go to the principal's right now. We have like 15 minutes before the next class. We explain everything. We're going to get like the quizzes back. We have to go to the principal. So they all run up to the principal's office and they go in and they explain what happened. And the dude was really mad. The principal was like, if what you're saying is true, like, that's a serious violation of whatever code of conduct or whatever the temp agency we went to or the substitute teacher agency. Like, we're going to get her fired. She'll never come back. Let's confront her now. So they all like run down to the classroom because he's like, I got to have an actual conversation to see what happened. I'll rush down to the classroom. And by the time they get there, she was gone. And she was gone from the classroom. And apparently, like, she never was like a substitute teacher again. She was never seen back at the school. And the subscriber doesn't actually know what happened to her. Like, he just never followed her origin story. Storytime playlist, top link in the description. Go watch that. Peace.